Hello everyone, I'm Sakshi Bharadwaj, a PhD scholar under Professor Pradeep K. Maji in Department of Polymer and Process Engineering, and currently I'm a TA under Professor Shishir Sena, Chemical Engineering, IIT Roorkee, and I'm taking the problem solving sessions first. And this is the course Polymer Process Engineering, and we are taking the questions related to assignment 0 and 1. So here a short description of mine. As I already told you, I am from Department of Polymer and Process Engineering, Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee, India. And I am currently pursuing my PhD on the topic fabrication of cellulose-based aerogels for thermal management applications. And apart from this, I did my master's from Maharishi Dayanand University, my bachelor's from Kilodimal College University. And apart from it, I've already been a research trainee in Hansraj College, Delhi University. Apart from my PhD and my education, I have done some research projects. First in Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee, over cellulose-based aerogels, and another one in University of Delhi over SARS-CoV-2, which is COVID-19 on COVID. So here we are taking some basic questions related to polymers, and during the questions we are also discuss about the main criteria, or I can say the basics of the topic. So starting with the first question, it is what is the process of connecting monomers to form a polymer called? I guess it is a very basic and simple question and anybody can answer it. And because we are starting this course right now, so this is the most important question as well. I want you guys to take some time or answer the question first, then I will discuss the answer or the details in brief time. You can put your answers in the chat box. I can see. Okay, if you have any query, anything related to it, you can also write that in the chat box so I can directly see what is the issue. Yes, so many people or many students has answered this as P, polymerization. Yeah, which is obviously correct. So it's P, polymerization. So starting with the topic polymers. So like what is the basic polymers? So this is a polymerization in which monomers unit connect to form a polymer. Mono means one, poly means many. So polymer is like many units of one particular component when combined together, so it form a polymer. And the process which we know is as polymerization. Apart from the normal polymerization, there is some steps or some main types of polymerization. First is the step growth polymerization. This is step growth. And another one is the chain growth polymerization. So what is the step growth polymerization? So step growth polymerization in which two molecules like two monomers can react with each other and in the either direction. So here you can see that this is the A monomer we have and this is the B monomer, and it can form like B, A, B, A, or the arrangement of different monomers could be different. So it is like both the monomers can react and form polymers. And this kind of step growth polymers, the examples of these are nylons and polyesters, in which we have two different units which can combine either by this side, either by that side. And it is called a step growth. And now second one is the chain growth polymerization. So it's a chain growth polymerization in which we require an initiator to initiate a reaction and from which different monomers can attach. So here I is the initiator here, and A is the monomer. So with this initiator, this A monomer can be attached. And here we can see that this initiator helps to initiate the monomer, and then it can propagate to join different type of monomers present there, and it can form a polymer chain like this. And this process is known as chain growth polymerization. It's like a growing of a chain. And examples for chain growth polymerization is polyethylene and polystyrene. So in the case of polyethylene, the ethylene repeating unit is ethylene, which is repeating with the help of an initiator. And in the case of polystyrene, the initiator helps to initiate the reaction of a styrene molecule. So I hope the basic concept of polymerization and basic types of polymerization is clear to everyone. Okay, and someone has asked, can A and B the same? Okay, I want to say if A and B is same, it's quite possible. It's or I can say like it's for the reaction between A and B should be right. So if A has a ending group, someone like acid. So if also B has a ending group like acid, so reaction of an acid and acid is kind of tough. In that case, we need to initiate a reaction by something, and then can A and B and different type of polymers can be formed. So yeah, arrangement of those kind of A and B is possible. So yeah, that's somewhat true. But it more like in the case of nylons or in the case of polymers, nylons in which one group is acid, another group is amine, and when they react, they form a amide group. And then from that amine and from the different type of acids and amines can be attached. So it is type of these step. And you are saying the can A and B and are same. So in the case of chain growth, when like A is the same monomer unit and it required initiation to form different type of propagation. So yeah, it could be possible in the step growth also if the reacting groups is the present, and if the reacting group is not and it required initiation, then it will call as its chain. Okay. Someone in the chat box say no sound. Am I not audible? Okay, we can hear. So I request the Prem Bala can check your connection once again so that you can see if any problem in your connection. Okay, then has the another question. Which type of polymer is formed when identical monomers are linked together? And this is the question when someone asks, can A and B be the same? Yes, of course. And which type of polymers take called if they are both identical? Or we can say the simple identical monomers are linked together. So yeah, answer is B, homopolymer. And of course, when the similar type of monomers can join, it called a homopolymer. And with different type of monomers join together, and it form a copolymer. And here I also explained that on the basis of different monomers or different arrangements, we define them as homopolymers and copolymers. A homopolymer is made up of only one type of monomer, repeat many times. For example, polyethylene and polystyrene, where the ethylene molecule repeat itself again and again. And in the copolymer, it's been made two or more different type of monomers are present. Depending of how the monomers are arranged, they can call be as copolymers, random, alternating, block, and graft. In the case of random, you can see like if we have a monomer and if we have a B monomer, and the linkage of A and B is like random. Like after B, it could be B again, could be again B, and then it could be A. So this is not fixed. And in the case of alternating, like one A is attached to B, then it's again A, then it's again B. This is kind of a alternating. In the block or graft type, in the block type where many A like these attached, and it's then different type of B. So it is forming a block of A first and then block of B. And the graph in which the monomers is like here, we can form a V, and it's like a grafting. So on any chain of any side, it could be a graph. So these kind of different polymerizations we have, and different on the basis of their arrangement, we can name them differently. So homopolymers usually have the uniform properties because it has the same type of monomers present to them. And copolymers, on the other hand, are often designed to combine the advantages of two or more monomers. Like if we want to make a polymer in which we require some desired properties, so we can add kind of those monomers itself. So it can show the properties of every particular monomer. Yeah, but the formation of alternate or random, that is a kind of lengthy process because most of the time the random polymerization which what precedes many, because you cannot decide what will form after B or A. So that's a different concept we can further read. So I hope this concept is clear to everyone, like what is copolymer, what is homopolymer, and different type of polymers. If anyone have any query till now, we can again repeat or again understand what is the concept, right? Or if no, we can move further. Okay, if no problems, then we can move to next topic. And this is the next question. Which of the following is not a type of polymerization mechanism? So after the different type of polymers and their arrangements, we are now focusing on type of polymerization reactions. Like there are different type of polymerization reactions as well, like many type of polymers. You can use different. Okay. So I guess some people didn't read the question again. I am repeating the question. It is asking like which of the following is not a type of polymerization mechanism. So here is the word not. We can focus over there. So it's like a not. Okay, I'm getting the mixed answers here. So I will explain that the correct answer for this is D, which is photodegradation polymerization. So what happens is, yeah, photodegradation polymerization is actually not a polymerization, and it is actually a degradation of already formed polymer with the help of UV or some light. So it's not forming a polymer, it's a degradation of polymers. So polymerization mechanism does not follow the photodegradation polymerization. Rather, free radical, ionic, and immersion. These kind of polymerization help monomer to combine and to form polymers with different mechanisms, of course. But photodegradation polymerization do not help monomers to react and to further polymers. It's a degradation. It's in the word itself. With the help of photo or the light, it's a degradation polymerization. So correct answer is D. It is not exactly a polymerization mechanism. I hope people who wrote answer B as correct, ionic polymerization, now got it right, that it is also a kind of polymerization in which cations or anions can be used for the polymerization reaction. But in the case of polydegradation, it is not a polymerization process. Okay, and if we are on the topic of different type of polymerization, we will have some idea like what is different type of polymerization. So starting with the free radical or ionic polymerization. So these type of polymerization in which we are required with a free radical or a ion like cation or anion to initiate the reaction of polymerization. So here you can see that it is a molecule and A here is a radical. So this is the monomer and this is the radical. And with the help of presence of this radical, this monomer will get activated and a radical will form here, to which different type of monomers can attach. So the help of from this radical, it will activate or it will initiate the reaction of monomers, and by which different type of monomers can be attached. Because before the initiation of any radical or any cation, those monomer unit cannot react itself. So it is required by some initiators. So that initiators could be radical, could be anion, could be cation. So here, in the case of cationic polymerization, it is written like some cation which help to form a C plus ion here, through which different type of monomer unit is attached. And this process continues where different type of C plus generates and it will react to different type of monomers and the polymerization reaction happens. And the photoinitiation of free radical polymerization, they have given some initiators in which we use free radicals, and in the cations also where we use them as free radicals. So these are the free radical or ionic polymerization, and apart from it, there is immersion polymerization. Immersion polymerization is a different concept. This polymerization happen in a medium with most probably is water, and in this case, we use the micelles formations, like it's a surfactant group with polar head and non-polar chain we use for the micelle formation, and there is a monomer and initiator in which the micelle is formed and in which the monomers and initiators are present with the micelle. And here, due to these initiators present, they will initiate the monomers which will can form different type of, which can attach different type of monomers to itself, and that polymeric chain like this is formed, and this reaction happen in a medium, mostly water. And this kind of polymerization is used to make latex paints, coatings, and adhesives. So mostly in those cases we use emulsion polymerization. And generally free radical and cationic polymerization is useful for sensitive polymers or specialized polymers, for the polymers like polystyrene and PMMA, generally free radical. Did we get this presentation? Yeah, I will upload this presentation, the video, completely on my YouTube channel. I guess you will get it from the NPTEL session, because we need to upload every video of this. I'm recording this, so you can get it from there also. Okay, so I hope the basic polymerization and different type of polymerization, the idea of this concept is clear to all, like free radical, ionic, and emulsion. If yes, we can move forward with the next question on different type of polymerization or different topic itself. If anybody have any question regarding this, I can explain any of the polymerization again. Okay, for free radical, okay, if I will repeat this concept again, what will happen to free radical after initiation? So yeah, that's an important question. There's a term called termination of polymerization reaction. Here, termination. So when the free radical or cationic polymerization happens, so it starts with the initiation with any radical formation, and then propagation in which different type of monomer units attach to it. So how the reaction stop and what happens to the radical? There's a phenomena which called termination. So in this case, what happens is either this kind of radicals, like one radical present on this particular short polymer, and like these different type of short polymers also present there. So sometimes what happens is like I have A kind of these with initiator, and yeah, this initiator is attached to it, and this A is a radical. So different type of monomers, and I also have a unit like A and initiator. So these kind of attach together and the formation of a polymer chain, and it will terminate. So in that case, the initiator will get present here as a side group. Yeah, it is possible. And what happens next to it, like this A can also be attached to different type of initiators already present in the medium also, that can be happen. And different type of initiators can also combine together to form I2 or kind of these molecules or the molecules we have started with. So different type of terminations can happen during polymerization, and that is a whole different phenomena in ballgame, I can say. So the termination also, what happened to cation is either it can be present as a side group of a long polymer chain. Like if we have a 5,000 or 1,000 or more than 1,000 polymers, monomers connected to each other. So it is like the end group could be the initiator. And this different type of termination can happen, like in which different type of monomers or this can be attached to it. Because once initiate the monomer, its radical is gone, and right now the radical will present on the last of the monomer, and it can react to different type of initiator or different type of monomer or polymeric chain already. So this is kind of free radical polymerization in which different type of products can be produced as a side product, as we can say. Okay, if this thing is clear, we can move forward with the next question. So this is the next question. Which of the following method is commonly used to polymerize hydrophobic monomers in water? So which method is commonly used to polymerize hydrophobic monomers in water? So right now we just have idea about different polymerization reactions. So it is like bulk. In the case of bulk polymerization, I can generally tell in which yeah, in which free radical, or I can say cationic or ionic polymerization is generally the type of bulk polymerization, because in that case only initiator or monomer is present. Monomer in the liquid form and initiator on the liquid form, we can just mix them and can form without any medium, we can do the bulk polymerization. In the case of solution polymerization, there should be a solution present, kind of water or some different. So, or the solvent in which the monomers can be dissolved, like if I talk about the polymethyl methacrylate. So methacrylate can be dissolved in the non-polar solvents like toluene or the. In the case of suspension polymerization, it's the suspensions. So it's like the monomers is not dissolved exactly in the medium, but it is in the suspended form. And there is last one, the emulsion polymerization, which we have discussed above already before, in which the micelle formation, or we have a group like surfactants which get attached to form a micelle inside monomers, and initiators can react. So this is the type of method we commonly use to form hydrophobic monomers, which is emulsion polymerization. This technique uses water as continuous phase and surfactants to stabilize the dispersion of hydrophobic monomers. It allows for high polymerization rates and control over particle size, commonly used for latex pens and adhesives. So in this case, yeah, the polymerization rates are high, and we can also control over particle size. Although it's quite tough, because in that case we need to stop the reaction in between to see how the particle has grown. And it is also a time dependent reaction, like the free radical, the ionic, and the emulsion, because in the free radical the radical will form only at a particular condition, and in the similar while the time period is also important. Like in the starting phase the monomeric chain is very small. As the time grows, the particle or the monomer chains grows within, and there is a time reached when the particles monomers are attached, and the chain grows to that point and it cannot move. I can say viscosity increases. So with the help of increase in viscosity, we can also check either polymerization is going on or not. So this is what we did in our lab also. Like we have put some solutions of monomers and initiators, and we can monitor the reaction with the change of viscosity. Like from very less viscous or solution, it is changed to, and because of the polymeric chain grows, the viscosity increases, and somehow it reached to a gel point, or I can say when the solution cannot move. Okay, I hope this is clear. So moving forward. This is the next question. Which of the following cannot initiate free radical polymerization? So this, they are asking you for different type of initiators. So which cannot initiate the free radical polymerization? Benzoyl peroxide, UV radiation, azobis isobutyronitride, AIBN, we can say, and acetic acid. So which cannot initiate free radical polymerization? Okay, here we are getting some multiple answers as well. Okay. So yeah, the correct answer is the acetic acid. Acetic acid generally we cannot use to initiate free radical reaction. Although I understand why some of you have not considered it as a not option, because you guys have seen the formation of radical CH3COO radical, but the formation of that radical is kind of quite tough and not that easy to initiate any polymerization reaction. So rather, the benzoyl peroxide, UV or azobis isobutyronitride, these can be used for easily free radical polymerization because they can easily form radicals due to the structure there and initiate the polymers itself. So here, this is the structure of AIBN. Yeah. So this is the structure of AIBN, and this is benzoyl peroxide. I am just writing it as a BP. So this is benzoyl peroxide. This is AIBN. So you can see this unit and here this unit. This particular unit known as azo group, this particular unit known as peroxide group. So that's why on applying heat and at 60 degrees Celsius, AIBN, this group cleave from here, forming the N radical, which can initiate the polymerization reaction very well. Similarly here, this bond can cleave very easily on applying heat because they are very, I can say, weak bonds. So they can very easily cleave and they form radicals here. And that these radicals can use for further initiation of different monomers for polymerization reactions. And if we talk about UV radiation, so UVs are also helpful to form different type of monomers. They can easily cleave the bonds of monomers to form their radicals. So yeah, radicals require generally initiator and on its own contain a breakable double bond, or either we can say single bond also, but it should be breakable. So benzoyl peroxide, AIB, and UV light, these can be used to form these to start these reactions. But acetic acid does not generally generate radicals and hence cannot initiate such polymerization reaction. So in general, for free radical polymerization, we use either AIBN and BP for the reaction success. I hope this from the till here the concept of polymers and all the is clear. So yeah, here's the how UV light initiate by what methodology or an example. Okay, sorry, I forgot to mention the example for UV. I should have mentioned also that. So it's like here also, in the case of AIBN, I have written that heat can generate the radical. But apart from heat, light or UV light also helps to generate or to cleave these bonds. So you have might heard of the photoinitiation reactions or the reactions which are initiated by lights or the UV lights. When the UV light fall on a molecule, so similarly at some point, the weak bonds can be break at that point. So apart from heat also, there is a light because light and heat, there are two phenomena to generate or to carry out the reactions. So yeah, so UV radiations can also help to form the radicals. So here, this reaction, this radical can also be formed by the UV also. I am not sure about at which conditions it will show as like for the what UV, what could be the wavelength of the light then. So yeah, that these are the factors which what is important for the photoinitiation reactions. But yeah, lights can also help to initiate the radicals itself or cations or no, not in the case of cations. It will form the radicals only. If we want more information of UV radiations or the photoinitiation reactions, I can give more. Not here exactly, but in later sessions I can include these as well. And yeah, about methodology. So it's a simple photoinitiation reaction. Like the UV, we have the UV chambers, and in which the UV at different wavelengths we can provide there with the different UV bulbs. So we can use these bulbs and put the reaction solution in there or reaction where the monomers or the initiator in there, and simply it can initiate the reaction. And that initiation you can also check by increase in viscosity itself. So it's a simple reaction. It can help in the with the help of UV chamber or some like this. Okay, I hope it is clear. So I'm moving forward with a different question. So yeah, which type of bonding dominate between polymer chains in thermoplastics? So there's a different concept, right? We are talking about is thermoplastic. So yeah, of course, after this question, we will discuss about the thermoplastic itself. Like for, right now, we need to answer this question. Which type of bonding dominate between polymer chains in thermoplastics? Hydrogen bond, covalent bond, ionic bond, or metallic bond? We have also read thermoplastic or thermosets in our maybe graduation or some, I guess, in 12th class also. There's a brief introduction of thermoplastic and thermoset plastics, I remember. So what kind of bonding is present between thermoplastic? Okay, so most of the people have answered it as A, which is also true. So your answer is A, hydrogen bond and van der Waals bond. So mostly hydrogen bond and van der Waals bond dominate between polymeric chain in thermoplastics. So yeah, in thermoplastics, the individual chains are not chemically cross-linked, which means they held together by like this is the one chain, this is another chain. So it's just a weak hydrogen bonding if or van der Waals force is present between them. And these weak interactions allow thermoplastic to soften or melt upon heating. So, like we heat them, they can melt or they can be soft and they can be reshaped and recycled. So, yeah, polymers like polyethylene, PVC, PET, we can use them again and again after remolding and remolding. So, yeah, PET, like we all know about the PET bottles. We can use them for recycling, or the polyethylenes, we are using them for recycling again and again because they are kind of examples of thermoplastics. And on the other side, there is also a thermosetting polymers like which are present, which have the strong covalent bond present in between them, which make them very rigid, very hard, and on applying heat, they cannot be melted. So yeah, in thermoplastic, the weak physical bonds are present and chained together in the solid forms, and in thermosets, it's not. For further detail of thermosets and thermoplastic, I have this. So the thermoplastic, which we have already discussed, that when heated and hardened when cooled. So yeah, they get softened when heated, hardened when cooled. This process can be repeated many times. This is because their chains are not chemically bonded and just weak van der Waals forces interaction between them. And common thermoplastic includes polyethylene and polystyrene as an example. On the other hand, thermosets undergo a chemical reaction when first heated and molded, forming strong cross-link between chains. And this, once they set, they cannot be melted or reshaped, that become hard and heat resistant. So there is a difference between thermoplastic and thermoset. So it's a table. Thermoplastics soften heat on heating, do not soften on heating. They are long chains. They are generally 3D structures. They can be reshaped and reused. They cannot be reshaped and reused. They are very weak and brittle. They are very hard and strong. So these are the example of thermoplastic in which linear chains generally present with the weak intermolecular forces between them, and they are the type of thermosets in which the 3D structure like this and the blue circle shows the covalent bonding present between them, so that the chains are entangled with the strong covalent forces which cannot allow them to move or to free when we apply heat on them. So it's like once set, they can be set. Generally, the example of thermoset is like Teflon. I hope the concept of thermoplastic and thermoset plastic is clear to everyone. Okay. So based on this, we have another question. Which of these is a thermosetting polymer? And right now it's very simple question because we already have discussed about the concept and about this. So which of these is a thermosetting polymer? Here. So yeah, most of you have answered it correctly, which is C and bakelite. Bakelite is type of thermosetting polymers. Earliest synthetic thermosetting polymers made by polymerizing phenol and formaldehyde together. It is also known for being rigid, heat resistant, electrically insulating, which make it popular in electric components like handles and kitchenware. Since bakelite does not melt on heating and cannot be reshaped, it is a classic thermoset. And this is the structure for the bakelite. So yeah, we have the bakelite handles in the kitchen cookware and also at switches or the formation of switchboards. There is also the bakelite there. What is the monomer for bakelite? So it's the monomer is there are the polymerization of phenol and formaldehyde. So like it's the monomers are phenol and formaldehyde there. So the phenol, you can see that's the simple structure of phenol and joined together with the formaldehyde, which is HCHO. So yeah, this could be the monomer unit for bakelite, which can attach to different phenols like this, different with the help of any free radical or different type of polymerization reaction. Okay, and the initiator. So initiator, we can use different type of initiators as well. It's not like it's only specific to AIPN or the benzoyl peroxide. That depends on the temperature or the time itself, because I already told you that AIPN works at the 60 degrees Celsius, while the benzoyl peroxide works at a higher temperature. So that depends on the initiator, like which condition you want to form the bakelite. Okay, I have no idea about the industrial production of bakelite, like how they produce it industrially or at the scale up level. But yeah, these kind of reactions can be initiated with the help of most common type of polymerization method for thermosetting. That I cannot comment on this type of, but yeah, most common type of polymerization method, different type of polymerization reaction. So it's like the free radical itself can form, or condensation polymerization can also be used to form kind of hard polymers itself, because in that case the condensation type of polymerization kind of like one group has some like acid and one group has some the amine and amine group at the end, and they can form and release molecules like water and different conditions, and that can be used for the different type of polymerization itself. So yeah, that could be also possible in the case of thermosetting polymer itself. Okay, then moving forward to the different question. So yeah, it's describe the tacticity in polymers. So which of the following correctly described? Okay, if someone have a query, can please write in the chat box. You can read from there itself, and yeah. So this is the next question. Which of the following correctly describe tacticity in polymers? So first, we need to understand the tacticity. Like, what is the tacticity in polymers? And then we can describe that what is the so okay. And the most of you corrected answer it correctly, which is C, the stereochemical arrangement of substituents along the polymeric chain. So yeah, that is we described as tacticity. So this is the whole concept of tacticity. Tacticity refers to the stereochemistry or the special arrangements of side groups, like someone has a methyl group or styrene group or polypropylene enriched propylene group on the polymer black backbone. And the arrangement of those side groups, how they are arranged, that define the tacticity. And on those tacticity or the arrangement, different properties like crystallinity, physical properties, it depends. So in it, there are three different type of arrangement possible for the polymers. Like one is isotactic, in which all the side groups are present at the same time. Uh, the another one is the symbiotic, in which the alternate group, like one group present at this side, one group present at this side, it's the alternative positions. And then a tactic in which the random arrangement of side groups are present. Like it is present on this side, another two y this side, or then it's this side. So it's a random arrangement. So you cannot decide which kind of side will be present at that. So yeah, the three type of tacticity is like isotactic, symbiotic, and atactic with the different properties. We have the concept of tecticity is clear. Then if it is, so we can move forward with the next question. Simple concept, the tecticity. Oh, great. So yeah, now it's the time for condensation polymerization. I briefly introduced it earlier. So which of the following is a condensation polymerize or polymer? So like from the condensation polymerization, which of the following follow polymer form? Polyethylene, nylon 66, PVC, and polypropylene. Okay, yes, I got some of the answers for condensation polymerization. Okay, then starting with the answer. So it's B, nylon 66, of course. And condensation polymerization of nylon 66 generally contain hexamethyldiamine and adipic acids, its two units, which can form and release water molecules. Condensation typically formed with the bioproducts like water or methanol. And the reaction could be like this. This is the adipic acid and this is the hexamethyl diamine. So it's like 6 C group in both of these monomers. And that's why we called it as 6 because of these 6 group present. And during the formation of these, so this is like OH and 1H from here release the water. And during this release of water, there's a formation of this bond, which is COONH, amide bond formed. And here the C6 and here also the C6. Similarly, this is the linkage of amine bond present and so on. Different type of units like here, the different acid, here different amine can attach to it to form a big polymer chain. So yeah, nylon 6 is an example of condensation polymer. Okay, is nylon 66 a homopolymer or a copolymer? So yeah, many of is considered is as a homopolymer because they think that the monomer repeating unit is the combination of this, which is this. But yeah, many of places you will find it as a copolymer itself because they will consider this as a two monomer, different monomer unit which are combined together. So yeah, I can say this type of a copolymer mostly because adipic acid and hexadimethyl are two kind of different monomers which can be attached to it and form a different copolymer type of arrangement. Yeah, but because you can look at the structure of nylon 6s, it's hard to define them as a different because the structure in with 6C with the CONH, then again 6C with CONH, kind of these structures present here. So yeah, from here itself, it is kind of saying that it should be look like a different homopolymer, but it is not, it is a copolymer. Okay, moving forward to next question. Which parameters reflect the distribution of molecular weight in polymeric samples? So among of these, class transition, viscosity, polydispersity, or crystallinity, which helps in the distribution of molecular weight in a polymer sample. Okay, which parameter reflect the distribution of molecular weight in a polymeric sample? I only got two answers at polydispersity index. So with that, it's correct also. So let's see polydispersity index. So what is the polydispersity index? So we can have idea about this one. So yeah, polymer are made when polymer combines. So different kind of monomers can get attached. Like someone could have 1,000 monomer units and some polymers have 2,000 monomer units, and that depends. So because of their different chain lengths, their molecular weight not is a single number, but it's a distribution. Some chains are short, some chains are long, and many are in between. So to describe this variation, we use generally two different type of averages. First is number average molecular weight, which we denote as Mn, and what is weight average molecular weight, which we denote as Mw. So Mn gives equal weight to all polymeric chains regardless of their size, and Mw gives weight more to longer and heavier chains. So generally, the polydispersity index is the ratio of this Mw by Mn. So it's tell us about how broad the graph is, and if PDI is 1, so in that case, because PDI is 1, is like all the chains are uniform, and this is a perfectly uniform structure and generally not formed, I can say, very rare case. And yeah, PDI is more than 1 because PDI above 1 is Mw, which is the weight to the higher chain, and that's also a greater value than Mn. So most of the general polymers PDI value should be higher than 1. So there's a mix of different chain lengths. It's a typical most real world polymers example. And if PDI is a key parameter used to describe how uniform or varied the polymer chains are. Like if it is close to 1, so it is like the most uniform chains. And if it is very far from the 1 or more than the value, that depends like the chains had different arrangements or different monomers attached to it. And this also consider and help to predict the different behavior and final material properties to them. So this is the graph of PDI in which molecular weight and number of molecules. It's like Mn. We can calculate Mn from here, Mw from here, and the polydispersity index from there. So this graph, like for polydispersity index more than 1, it is a broad graph, and for polydispersity index near to or equal to is a sharp graph, the sharp peak kind of this. Because in that case, different many of the polymer chains have different number of same number of monomers in them. So I have the concept of PDI, polydispersity index, is clear. And I also wanted to ask, because we are have covered right now very many topics and many concepts. So if anyone have any problem to any of the concept or any of the topic, I can go to that slide and repeat that again. So you can just text me in the chat box about topic or about the question or example. Okay, if so we can move forward with the next question. And yeah, this is the next question. Which of the following is a biodegradable polymer? It's a different question, kind of not related to any topic, but yeah, why? So which of the following is a biodegradable polymer? PET, polycaprolactone, polystyrene, or Teflon? Okay, so any of you is answered as B, polycaprolactone. And yeah, which is correct answer itself because we know already that PET, polystyrene, and Teflon. So like PET and polystyrene, we generally use them for recycling. If they are biodegradable polymer, we don't have any problem for recycling of them and we can simply biodegrade them. And Teflon, of course, is a thermosetting polymer. It's different to degrade. So it is not also a biodegradable polymer. So the living one is the polycaprolactone, which is a biodegradable polymer with a structure. Thus, PCL is a biodegradable polyester used in biomedical and packaging application most of the cases because of its biodegradation nature. Its ester linkage are susceptible to hydrolysis and make it degrade under natural conditions or in the body. So because of their ester groups present in them, so they are very much susceptible to hydrolysis. So it is because the breakage of ester bond is kind of easy, and that's why it can easily break to degrade. So yeah, it's B. I think it's a simple concept. It does not have any issue with this. It's simply biodegradable polymer, polycaprolactone. And among the examples, we can simply protect it because rest of the polymers we can recycle yeah, most of the cases we can only recycle thermoplastic polymers, not thermosets. Because thermosets, once I recently have this topic of thermosets, and in that case, they are once set, cannot be remolded again on heating or on cooling. That's why we cannot recycle thermosets. We can also recycle thermoset, normal thermoplastics like PET we can recycle, polystyrene we can recycle, polypropylene, polyethylene, these type of polymers can be recycled, but that Teflon, Bakelite, these cannot be recycled. And that is why for the single-use plastic, we do not use thermosets. We generally use thermoset plastic where we need to use them for a longer time, like kitchen cookware. We can use those kitchen cookwares for years and years, or the switches or itself, where we can use the thermosets. That's why. And the single-use plastic, like the polyethylene bags and the poly PET bottles, they are single-use plastic because we can recycle them easily. So it's we can use thermoplastic as single-use plastic. So, yeah. The concept is clear right now. Thermoplastic and recycling of thermoplastic and thermosets. And if yes, we can move further with the next question. Okay, so the next question is the glass transition temperatures, the next different topic we are going to discuss. The glass transition temperature is best described as the temperature at which polymer ignite, at which the melting point of crystalline region, the temperature at which an amorphous polymer becomes soft and rubbery, or the degradation temperature of the polymer. So, what is TG, the glass transition temperature? Okay, I got some mixed answers this time. I'm expecting some more answers for this. The glass transition temperature is an important parameter for a polymer and to describe the polymeric properties as well, the TG. Okay, so the correct answer is C, not B. And the temperature at which amorphous polymer becomes soft and rubbery. The B is the melting point of crystallization, that is called as a melting temperature, which we denote as TM. So there's like three different phenomena occur when we talk about polymer. The first phenomena is TG. The other phenomena is TM, which is the melting, and the last phenomena is TC, which is the crystallization. So three different type of transitions we can see in a polymers. Okay. So yeah, polymers can either be amorphous or semi-crystalline. In both the cases, for amorphous polymer, one of the most important properties is the gas transition temperature. And most of the polymers are semi-crystalline. The either pure amorphous or pure crystalline polymers are like many, just few of them. And for the amorphous case, we can say we can see the glass. Glass is the case of pure amorphous, and for the pure crystalline, I guess PDMS is an example for this. But most of the polymers are semi-crystalline. So for the amorphous polymer, one of the most important properties is the glass transition temperature. This is the temperature below at which polymer chains from a hard glassy state to soft rubbery state. So before TG, it's a hard polymer, and after TG, the polymeric state changed to little bit softer side. And yeah, before TG, the polymer chains are froze and cannot move, and the material feels rigid and brittle. So yeah, it can also break at that point. Above TG, the chains similarly gain mobility, make the polymer more flexible and rubber-like. So, and yeah, it is important to note TG is not as a melting point. Melting point is when completely solid to liquid. It's a transition of solid to liquid. So TG is not a transition from solid to liquid. It is transition from solid or hard rigid to soft side, not exactly to inner liquid. So there in a polymer, there's a TG and there's also a TM in that case, because after TG, when the polymer has some movement in the chains and we increase the more temperature to liquid more and more. So there's a point when all the polymeric chains are the movement between them is so fast, or so they the molecules of them get free and can change into liquid. So yeah, that is TM. And TG is a second order thermal transition. It mainly, because the first order is like thermal TM, which is the first order transition for solid to liquid, but the TG is a second order thermal transition, and it mainly affects the amorphous polymers or the amorphous regions in semi-crystalline polymers. Now, there's an example, for example, polystyrene has a TG of about 100 degrees. So it feels rigid at room temperature, rubber on other hand, and a TG well below room temperature, which is why it's soft and elastic. So polystyrene has a TG of 100 degrees. So before 100, it is rigid in structure. And rubber, because we use rubber and it's kind of soft and elastic in nature because the TG is below room temperature. So because of the TG below room temperature, up on the room temperature or above room temperature, it behave like a soft and we also can rubbery type of polymers. Or elastic, we can use the word elastic for this. So yeah, it is about the TGs. And as I talked about three or four different type of transitions when we increase the temperature, like TG, TM, TC. So it's a graph you can see, or you have seen somewhere. It is like this. So yeah, it is a graph of heat flow and the temperature. This is the graph of our DST, differential scanning calorimetry for a polymer, in which we can see different type of transition occurs. So starting with the low temperature. So this is the lowest temperature when the polymer chain is hard and rigid. There is a transition which you can see the step-like transition. So this is the TG. So here this step-like transition is TG, where the polymer changes from hard to soft. And this is the exo down, because we have the DST exo down or exo up. So in that case, the transition depends. Like in this case, TC is coming down because it's exo down. When we flip this graph to exo up, the TC will come above side and TM will come down side. So this graph can be designed in that way also and this way also. So yeah. So this is a step transition. So this is a step transition which in which the polymeric chain get little bit flexibility here and it will become soft. And after the soft, the chains align and form a crystallization zone and where the TC come. So it's a phenomena like in every polymers you cannot see the phenomena of TC or much prominent like these peaks. So it's like the simple peaks. So it's like after the TG when they the chains can align together and form crystalline kind of like one chain align on another chain and another chain. So it's a crystalline zone. So there the TC comes, the crystalline temperature. And then on further increase the temperature, the movement between the chains increase and there's a melting of polymers. So here the polymer completely became solid to liquid. And after the TM also there's a decomposition. So yeah, the degradation of polymer chains. So it's at a high temperature like 300, 200. So degradation of temperature depends polymers to polymers, like in which temperature it degrades. Some of them are start degrading at 100 also, and some of them are degrading 200, 300. So it's like higher the degradation temperature, the stable the polymer is at the. So I hope the phenomena of TG, apart from TG, TC, TM, and degradation is clear to you all with this graph as well. If yes, so we can, if anybody have any doubt in this, I can repeat this graph again. And if not, we can move to the different question. Okay, then we can move to different question. And the next question is, which of these property increase with increasing molecular weight of a polymer? Which property increase when we increase the molecular weight? Yeah, I just got us one answer. Okay, most of you answered as D, which is tensile strength, and it is also correct. So, which of this property increase with the increase in molecular weight of a polymer? So, we can simply say that when increase of a molecular weight or chains or the different monomers, so the chain size increase. So, in that case, the important factor is tensile strength or the strength is increased. And the reason with the molecular weight increase, the entanglement and van der Waals forces between chains, like the smaller chains can align themselves very easily and form the crystalline zone, which can also melt easily and also can be soluble in water. When the chains increases, so it start entangling like this. So here the crystalline zones decrease, the melting also in this case with difficult, and the property which increase in this case is the tensile, or I can say mechanism. Like in the case of tensile, you can pull the sample like this. If I have a simple, you can see a polymer sample like this. So the increasing of those sample, this is the tensile strength. It is kind of hard to stretch and to break. So yeah, with the increase of molecular chain because of the entanglement, mechanical properties like tensile, impact resistance, processability may reduce, but other properties like these can increase a bit. case, apart from this kind of simple question, we are moving to a different concept. Like in Ziegler-Natta polymerization, which type of polymers are typically produced? So yeah, there's a polymerization, Ziegler-Natta polymerization, in which we use Ziegler-Natta has formed a catalyst which is used for polymerization of reactions. So which kind of polymerization of polymers is formed in that case? Cross-linked, highly branched, stereoregular, or biodegradable? Okay. So yeah, most of you has answered it correctly, which is C, stereoregular polyolefins. Most of the in the case, Ziegler-Natta is used for polyolefins like polyethylene, polystyrene, polypropylene type of polymerizations, and it's a type of catalyst which is used in the polymers. And yeah, this is the basic structure or basic idea of Ziegler-Natta polymerization. So yeah, Ziegler-Natta polymerization is special kind of catalytic chain growth polymerization used mainly to produce polyolefins like polymers made of simple alkenes like ethylene, propylene, styrene, these kind of. And it used Ziegler-Natta catalyst. So what is a Ziegler-Natta catalyst? So generally titanium tetrachloride like TiCl4 with the triethyl aluminium with triethyl groups can attach to form these Ziegler-Natta catalysts. It's titanium in between, and the geometry of this is octahedral, in which three sides are four. Most of the sides are chlorine, and this chlorine and this CH2 attached with different aluminium chain, and there is a void present. So yeah, this void is used for polymerization. This void is used for polymer formation. And the key advantage of this method is allowed over the arrangement of side groups. Like we can form different type of isotectic, atectic polymers kind of these with this. Isotectic polypropylene, we have already discussed all the groups on the same sides, and tyrotectic alternating sides. So this type of polymers can be formed with the help of Ziegler-Natta catalyst. And these stereoregular structures led to high crystallinity, improved mechanical strength, melting points, but chemical resistant compared to random versions. Better chemical resistance. So Ziegler-Natta polymerization is widely used in industry to produce high performance plastics like stiff strong polypropylene, high density polyethylene, HDPE, and materials used in container, ropes, pipes, and many household products. So yeah, these are the high performance plastics because the formation of isotectic and syntactic are still tough. Rather, atectic, or I can say the random polymers can form very easily with the free radical reactions with the AIBN or benzoyl peroxide we have discussed. Because in that case, we cannot decide like which monomer is going to attach or which side it should be. So it's a kind of a random polymerization or atectic polymerization. But with the help of simply Ziegler-Natta catalyst, we can use or we can decide which kind of polymers we want to form, like isotectic and syntactic. I hope the concept of Ziegler-Natta catalyst is clear, and the structure of Ziegler-Natta is also important because many of the questions can ask you the structure of Ziegler-Natta. So it's a structure in which titanium tetrachloride and triethyl aluminium combine to form an octahedral geometry with a void in it, and this void is used for polymerization of further monomers. And yeah, this is the last question of this presentation, and there's the last concept. What is the main principle behind separation in shell permeation chromatography? So this is the question about GPC, in which we can discuss about the GPC parameters or principles and the method. So, which of the main principle behind separation? How GPC happens? Okay. So yeah, the correct answer is B, which is separation based on molecular weight or size. So GPC, gel permeation chromatography, do the separation of different polymeric chains on the based on their molecular weight or size. GPC, also known as size exclusion chromatography, because it's based on size. So it is also known as size exclusion chromatography, and it's a powerful technique used primarily in polymer science to determine different molecular weight distributions of polymers. So we can simply determine how many type of different polymeric chains present in different polymers. So yeah, this is gel permeation chromatography. The schematic diagram you can see, it's a column in which the porous gel beads with a specific size are present, and in which we are going to add our polymers with different polymeric chains. So it's like the small chains and the large chains or different polymer chains. So what happened here is that firstly, the large molecules and the smaller molecules. So here the porous gel beads, the smaller molecules or the smaller chains get trapped in the pores of those beads, and the larger ones which cannot trap, there can come fast. So in that case, the large molecules elute first, and the smaller molecules, the smaller chains elute later. So yeah, the chromatography can show, because with the different chain size, so different type of peak we will observe in that case. Like it will observe the two type, and we can observe different multiple type, like more than two or three, because of the different sizes of polymeric chains. So yeah, in that case, molecules are separated as they pass through a column packed with porous beads. So large molecules cannot enter the pores and elute easily, and the smaller molecules can easily enter the pores and take longer time to elute. So the basic of the time difference, we can form different type of uh, uh, peaks with this, and can take the information like how different type of chains are present in the polymer. And yeah, it is helpful for determining the number of average molecular weights, the weight average molecular weight, and the polydispersity. With this technique, we can find out these values as well, and this can indicate the distribution of molecular weight in a polymer. So we just recently seen a graph of PDI, which is shown as like this. So yeah, this can be given as a graph of PDI in which different molecular chains is present, which we can use to identify the molecular weight of a polymer itself. And it can also used for how many types of polymer chains are present in that. So yeah, this is the last topic for the today's presentation. I hope you guys understand today's concepts and topics. And I right now want to ask if anyone and have any problem in any of the topic or concept, I can go and read that again. And I hope everything is clear until now. Okay, then it's everything is clear, then that's good. I hope you guys enjoyed today's presentation as well. And I wish you all the best for week one assignment. You can, with these questions, these will help you to do week first assignment first. In the next session, we will take the week second assignment, second simple similar questions and so. And yeah, thank you so much all for the listening to me. Yeah, recording of the session will be available online. Yes, I am just putting the recording on the solution in the online on the my YouTube channel as well as for the NPTEL sessions as well. Okay, then. Thank you very much. Okay, so if not right now, I can do one thing. In my next session, I can provide the link of my YouTube channel as well. Right now, I need to put the video itself and form a channel then, and can give you the link itself. Okay.